Greetings and salutations, everybody. It's XLJtheOG from Cole TV, and welcome back to Back in the Day. Now, if you don't know by now, here on Back in the Day, we like to take a look back at the rich history of World Championship Wrestling and highlight some of their greatest matches, rivalries, stories, merchandise, and of course magazines, and so much more. So for this week's episode, let's start it off with our top story. And this week we are going all the way back to June the 16th, 1993 to Clash of the Champions 23, where Ric Flair made his in-ring return to WCW after leaving the World Wrestling Federation. So Ric Flair would finish up his first one in the World Wrestling Federation on January 25th, 1993, where he would lose a loser leaves town match on Monday Night Raw to one Mr. Perfect. You gotta keep in mind, Ric Flair just had pretty much a handshake deal with Vince McMahon. But Ric made the decision to return back home to World Championship Wrestling. And he did just that on February 21st of 1993, where he made a surprise appearance at WCW's Super Brawl 3. And Ric did return to World Championship Wrestling. He still technically could not wrestle in ring. However, he did make television appearances sporadically. And he still had a non-compete clause in his contract where he could not wrestle in the ring. So in order to counter this, WCW decided to give Ric Flair his own talk show segment called A Flair for the Gold. And each week, Ric Flair would host all sorts of different talents throughout World Championship Wrestling. However, there was one episode where Ric Flair hosted the Hollywood Blondes, Stunning Steve Austin and Flying Brian Pillman, who were the current World Tag Team Champions at the time. And on this episode, Flying Brian and Stunning Steve really lit into Ric Flair, making fun of his age. And they would continue on in later weeks on television as they would continue to mock Ric Flair and his partner Arn Anderson in the Four Horsemen. Ultimately, this would lead Ric Flair to returning back into the ring, and he would do just that on June 16th of 1993 at Clash of the Champions 23, where him and Arn Anderson would team up to challenge the Hollywood Blondes for the World Tag Team Championships in a 2 out of 3 falls matchup. Now, me personally, I think this is a great matchup in general, but what a great way to come back to work with two of the top young talents in WCW at the time. And let's face facts, the Hollywood Blondes were one of the, not only the hottest tag teams, but one of the hottest acts in WCW in 1993. But the match really writes itself, and it's an incredible affair. And it's just amazing to think like Ric Flair would be in the ring with someone like Steve Austin and how huge of a star he would be, and a future Horseman stablemate in Brian Pillman. It was just a classic tag team match, a lot of back and forth. And like I say, it was really a great matchup for Ric Flair to make his return. Now, ultimately, the Horsemen would win this matchup 2 falls to 0. However, they won by disqualification, and thus, because of that, the tag team titles would not change hands. But it's hard to imagine World Championship Wrestling without Ric Flair, but hey, there was a very brief time where Ric Flair was not in WCW, but he did have a triumphant return. And that, my friends, is your top story of the week here on Back in the Day. Now, each week here on Back in the Day, we like to highlight a match, and today's match is the definition of a Donnybrook. I want to go all the way back to 1996, to WCW Uncensored 1996, which honestly is a pretty terrible pay-per-view, but it did have a couple of amazing matchups on it, and that's one of them that we're talking about today. We're talking about the matchup between Lord Steven Regal going up against the Belfast Bruiser, Fit Finlay. Now, I remember like the build-up to this and like not knowing a whole lot about Fit Finlay, but they did a great job explaining like his past and his run-ins with William Regal over in Europe. And this was going to be just a physical matchup between 2 great European wrestlers. And at the time, I think it was really something WCW had not seen yet. I mean, we were already incorporating the Lucha Libre style into WCW, as well as so many other different styles, so why not add the European style to it as well? And boy, oh boy, did these two deliver. I mean, they just lay into each other. You talk about strong style, that's the definition of this matchup. They are stiff as hell, beating the ever-loving piss out of each other throughout this match. Now, ultimately, the match, believe it or not, would end in a disqualification. But I have to say, this is probably one match that I've seen, or I can go back and watch over and over again, regardless of the end result. But man, oh man, William Regal and Fit Finlay, they're just two of those guys who just had incredible chemistry together. And this is a matchup I definitely recommend you check out. And it's our match of the week here on Back in the Day. So for this week's rivalry here on Back in the Day, we are going to take a look at one of the best rivalries at the height of the NWO era in World Championship Wrestling. And of course, I'm talking about the rivalry between the Macho Man Randy Savage and Diamond Dallas Page. And this would be DDP's first real main event rivalry. And boy, oh boy, did it put him over. I mean, just getting to work with the Macho Man Randy Savage is one thing, but these guys had an incredible rivalry that lasted over a year, essentially. And just, once again, these are two guys, just, they had it. They worked so well together. But this rivalry, it kicks off at WCW Uncensored 1997, where Diamond Dallas Page would be cutting a promo, and the Macho Man Randy Savage would be up in the balcony and would interrupt. But to raise the ire and up the ante of Diamond Dallas Page, the Macho Man and Elizabeth would unveil information that DDP's wife, Kimberly, had posed in Playboy magazine. And they would even reveal some censored images of Kimberly from that Playboy magazine, with, of course, the appropriately sprayed NWO over Diamond Dallas Page's wife. Of course, this made DDP livid, but strength in numbers, the Macho Man and the NWO would attack and beat the holy hell out of Diamond Dallas Page and would end up spray painting DDP's wife Kimberly, and this rivalry was born. So, the first matchup between DDP and the Macho Man would take place at WCW Spring Stampede 1997. And this is an awesome matchup, too, especially for the first time with these two going at it. And this would be DDP's first real pay-per-view main event. And Diamond Dallas Page has said many times in interviews about how he praised the Macho Man Randy Savage and really how the Macho Man really put him over and made him. The Macho Man was smart too, because when they were talking about the finish, the Macho Man in classic Macho Man fashion said, "I think I'll take the diamond cutter." And I mean, that was the perfect way to really make this a rivalry and kick this off, with DDP getting a win and establishing himself as a truly a threat to the Macho Man and the NWO. And this rivalry just went back and forth between these two. I'll never forget the moment where Diamond Dallas Page was dressed as La Parka and delivered a diamond cutter. And I mean, first of all, La Parka's a big guy, but he ain't that big. I mean, come on, man. But anyways, that was just one of several cool highlights all throughout. Now you fast forward to the Great American Bash 1997. DDP would meet the Macho Man again in the main event, only this time it would be in a pinfalls, count anywhere, no holds barred matchup. Man, these guys just upped the ante. The brawling that these guys went through in this matchup, and just the back and forth, and just the physicality of this, it was just great. You could just tell, I feel like this feud really, reinvigorated the Macho Man Randy Savage, who honestly at this point was kind of getting lost in the shuffle, I think, with the NWO. But this was really elevating him too, as much as he was elevating DDP. Now, of course, the Macho Man would ultimately end up winning this matchup at the Great American Bash, and thus tying the series between the two. But ultimately, this rivalry would come to an end at WCW Halloween Havoc 1997 in a Las Vegas sudden death match. Once again, this would be another matchup, pretty much pinfalls, count anywhere, just brawling all throughout the arena. And ultimately, the Macho Man would defeat Diamond Dallas Page and ultimately be the victor in this rivalry. But the thing is, I said it before and I'll say it again, this feud put DDP on the map as a main event level player, and it also made Macho Man cool again in a way. Because like I say, he was getting kind of lost in the shuffle, so this rivalry really helped both competitors. And like I say, this is definitely one of the best feuds throughout the NWO versus WCW era. And thus it makes it our rivalry of the week here on Back in the Day. So if you follow me on TikTok and other social media platforms, you know I'm a huge collector. One of the things I love to collect is magazines, and I love me some wrestling magazines, and I love sharing them with you here on Back in the Day. So today, got another magazine I want to share with you, and this one is WCW Magazine from March of 1994, which ironically is the Year in Review Awards for 1993. So let's check it out. Okay, here you see it. The Year in Review. You got Ravishing Rick Rude. You got the tandem of Too Cold Scorpio and Marcus Alexander Bagwell. And there's Vader and the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Oh, and there's a story on Cactus Jack and Max Payne. Oh, wow. Hey, look at this. A Missy Hyatt planner for 1994. And here in the newsline, they're talking about the Nature Boy Ric Flair and Big Van Vader's rivalry at the time for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, which they would meet at Starrcade 93. Oh, crazy caption. Caption the picture. What would Jerry Sags say? And here we go. Have you heard? Now, here's some interesting tag teams you probably don't remember at WCW. What about the Colossal Kongs? Or how about the Cole Brothers? Oh, who am I? 1988, I was voted second runner-up in PWI's magazine for Rookie of the Year. Entered WCW last January, so this would have been January of 93. Favorite rock bands, Metallica. First title match was a U.S. title bout against Dustin Rhodes. Submission move is an arm lock, but it's a killer. Do you know who it is? Because I do. And this is kind of funny. Superstar stats on Gene Okerlund? So he's got his height and weight in here. Favorite maneuvers is Superplex. And favorite TV shows, Beavis and Butthead? Oh, Gino. Oh, and here you see some fan art. There's the British Bulldog. That's Road Warrior Hawk. That's a pretty cool Sting picture. Oh, look at Sting giving the Stinger splash. And it's dumb. It's what the hell is going on with Vader in this picture? We got like some top 10 lists, you know, top 10 ratings, 10 people with the best hair, 10 cutest butts in WCW. Buff Daddy as a young man. Oh, here you go. Some highlights of WCW touring the UK and Germany. Yes, this would be that infamous tour where you would end up seeing Vader rip off the ear of Cactus Jack. Now, interesting enough, in this particular issue, and I think they did this in like later years, like half the issue would be in color and the rest of it is going to be in black and white. 10 questions with the Shockmaster. Oh, poor Uncle Fred. Hear me out with the American Dream. Dusty Rhodes. Oh man, oh man. Look at this, meeting of the Demise, Cactus Jack and Max Payne, who was a tag team in the beginning of 1994 and would feud with the Nasty Boys. Okay, I lied. Of course, the year-end Reader Awards is going to be in color, so let's check that out and see who the big winners were of 1993. Your Rookie of the Year was the Shockmaster. Was nobody else available to vote for? Oh, look at your runner-up with Yoshi Kwan, and I'm pretty sure he wasn't a rookie. As we all know, the Shockmaster wasn't a rookie, but whatever. Most popular wrestler of the year went to the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And your runner-up was Sting! But that's interesting that Ric Flair would be your most popular. When you look back in the history of WCW, of course, he was primarily the most hated wrestler, so interesting turn of events for the Nature Boy. Your most hated wrestler of the year is one Ravishing Rick Rude. And how about that runner-up? Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff. which I think Paul Orndorff had a magnificent run in WCW at the end of his career. Your tag team of the year is Too Cold Scorpio and Marcus Alexander Bagwell? Even though they held the tag team titles for like literally a month or less, don't know if I necessarily agree with that. That is your true winners, the Nasty Boys. But it's the fan vote, and they decided to go with Too Cold and Marcus Alexander Bagwell. I just think it's funny too how these two hate each other in real life. And your wrestler of the year, of course, it'd have to be the dominant Big Van Vader. I mean, his run in 1993 with that WCW Championship was incredible. Look at that, your runner-up was Ravishing Rick Rude. 93 was a big year for Rick Rude, too. He would win his first World Heavyweight Championship by winning the WCW International Championship, which is pretty much the NWA title. And the WCW Man of the Year is one British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, who made his debut in WCW in 1993. Of course, he would only be around for about like 8 to 10 months, and after that he would leave and end up going back to the World Wrestling Federation. Predictions 1994. Look at this, Ric Flair and Fifi will get married. Well, they weren't really wrong. It'd be about 30 years later, but yeah. Now this part, they do take a look at the year in review in 1993, just highlighting some of the feuds and other highlights in WCW. We see some imagery from Slamboree 93, the Legends Reunion. Talks about all the different injuries that occurred this year. Also, how about this? Sting and Sting met each other. And there you see Michael PSAs with Leonard Skinner. And then they talk about the split up between the Hollywood Blondes, which was definitely way too soon. The Nasty Boys making their return to WCW with Missy Hyatt as their manager. And I think a lot of people have seen this image, but it's of the British Bulldog, Cactus Jack, and Sting overseas, clowning around, if you will. Here's a few points on the mastodon himself, Big Van Vader. Of course, insights from Ric Flair, Harley Race, and Sting. And here we see our parting shot with the British Bulldog lifting up one yucky fan overseas in the UK during WCW's tour of Europe. And finally, let's not forget, call that hotline 1-900-909-9900. WCW Magazine from March of 1994 is our magazine of the week here on Back in the Day. And here on Back in the Day, we always like to highlight some of the great merch throughout the years of World Championship Wrestling. And today I want to talk about the WCW Bash at the Beach playset. The floating ring. Or as they called it, the Splash and Bash playset. So this was released by Toy Biz in the late 90s, and the idea behind it was to capitalize on WCW's Bash at the Beach fame. But they decided to one-up it to pretty much make it essentially a floating ring. Of course, it had all sorts of fun accessories like a slide, you had like a little squirt gun thing you could shoot in the ring, you had like a grappling like thing where you could hang your wrestlers. And it came with some really cool accessories too, like it had floating tires around the ring, like life preservers, beach balls, and the ring actually did float, believe it or not. And you know, they made Toy Biz made a lot of cool toys, and some odd ones too for WCW, but I think this is a pretty cool playset to have, and an interesting concept too. And hey, if you ever wanted to somehow recreate that electrifying shark cage match from Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling, you can do it now with this ring and a bathtub. And some sharks. But just don't electrocute yourself. But the WCW Bash at the Beach Splash and Bash playset floating ring is our item of the week here on Back in the Day. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Back in the Day. As always, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for World Championship Wreckage because they put out some amazing content here on their YouTube channel. And hey, if you like content like this, then why don't you come on over to Cole TV and check out some of the awesome content we have going over there. Of course, weekly wrestling shows like Pro Wrestling 60, as well as Lure of the Ropes, prediction shows for all your major pay-per-view events, and so much more. And right now over on Cole TV, you can catch some replays of the newest episodes of some of our more popular shows like The Hunt, And I'm your Huckleberry, as well as our vlog on Tri-State Wrestling, where we went to the Anti-Up show in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. In addition to that, you can always catch Pro Wrestling 60 every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As well as Learn the Ropes is coming back, and we've got a new time slot, a new night. We are going Thursday nights now, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be returning on June the 22nd. All this over on Cole TV. So come on over and subscribe and like and join the revolution that is Cole TV. Well, once again, I'm XLJtheOG, and thank you so much for watching back in the day here on World Championship Wreckage's YouTube channel. And hey, gotta say it again, if you're not doing it already, hit that like and subscribe button. Until next time, I'll see you at the matches.